Imagine you're a normal high schooler and randomly one day, your parents tell you that you have a fiancé. Moreover, they'll be living with you from today on. The story begins as a high school girl, Kobeni Yonomori, turns 16, but suddenly her life turns upside down when her mom tells her that her grandfather decided on her fiancé, a timid, angry-looking boy, Hakuya Mitsumine. And this boy will start living together with their family, and not only him, but also his little sister, Mashiro. And to her surprise, she had met her fiancé before, but doesn't remember it at all. Even her sister Benio, that loves her a bit too much, allows it. Then, after an awkward meeting, the two head out to shop for dinner, but things only end up on an even more awkward note when the boy tries to pat her head, and Kobeni gets too conscious of him. The next day, the siblings join Kobeni to school, as she tries to hide the fact that Hakuya is her fiancé. Although the two siblings are surprised to see a much different and popular Benio at school. Benio continues teasing Mashiro, who becomes more and more wary of the hysterical girl. But thanks to the younger sister preparing her favorite dish for dinner, they get along better. Mashiro accidentally mentions how her brother rescued Kobeni in the past, but gets cut off by her brother before she could finish. He forbids her to speak of this because he doesn't want her to marry him out of obligation because he saved her. But Kobeni herself keeps thinking about it, and before falling asleep, vaguely remembers how she spent the summer in the mountains with her grandfather and met someone. The next day at school, after going through some of Benio's torture, Mashiro accidentally spills that she and her brother are living at Kobeni's house. The next day at school, Benio finally manages to invite Mashiro for some tea in the student council room. Meanwhile, Kobeni and Hakuya head to buy ingredients to make scone for his little sister. And she also buys 2 bowls for the siblings, since they are now a family. The next day, on the weekends, they all sit together and have scone. But throughout the day, Kobeni can't help but think about Hakuya's secret. What was it that she was forgetting? In her curiosity, she heads to her sister's room and asks her about why didn't she oppose to Hakuya, on which she replies that he had saved Kobeni's life when she was little. Upon hearing this, she thinks of herself as the worst for forgetting this. Learning the truth about her fiancé the next day, she ends up with a fever, and Benio makes an effort at making breakfast for everyone. Mashiro frustratingly asks her about why she didn't tell her sister about her past, on which she replies that it would have been better if she never remembered it because she ditched Kobeni on the day of the accident, so it's her fault too. Hearing this, a sick Kobeni walks in, struggling to tell them that it's no one's fault but hers. After 2 days of bed rest, she finally recovers, but things stay awkward between her and Hakuya as she's unable to make eye contact with him, causing him to blitz out of the house. She chases after him, exclaiming she doesn't remember anything but still owes him a thanks. Upon hearing her real feelings, a smile appears on his face that awes her, and thus the two become a tad bit closer to each other. Later that day, the two siblings receive a letter from their family stating that someone is coming to check on them. The next morning, they let the rest know that they will be having a visitor. Although, while shopping, Kobeni encounters a petite lady in a kimono who appears to be lost. So, she decides to help her, but it turns out that she is Hakuya's and Mashiro's mother, Shirayuki. And amidst the conversation, the mother accidentally lets it slip that her family is not human, shocking everyone, especially Kobeni, who falls ill. And hearing this, she briefly remembers the huge black dog she met in her childhood. While she's in bed, Shirayuki once again accidentally tells her that it was Hakuya who shared half of the powers with her in order to save her when she was injured. And just like a pacing wind, she heads back to the mountain, but before that, she thanks Kobeni for treating Hakuya with kindness. From that day, Benio becomes curious about what sort of power the two siblings have, and starts pestering them about wanting to see their transformations, but Mashiro rejects her. Meanwhile, Valentine's Day approaches. Thus, Kobeni resolves to prepare some chocolate for Hakuya, together with Mayura, her classmate, and Mashiro. But while preparing, she reminisces about how she used to be alone at home, hence learned cooking, so that's the only thing she's good at, and the dream that she had as a child about becoming a wife, which she is very embarrassed about. But Benio assures her, despite her bickering, it's still her own dream. Thus, she continues working on her sweets with a new enthusiasm, and after some reluctance to hand over the chocolate and some support from Mayura, she finally manages to hand it over to him. A few days later, Mashiro notices that an unknown entity has been following her around, but it's none other than the student council secretary Konoha, the secret admirer of Benio, so she's jealous of Mashiro and Kobeni. One of her friends, Nico, member of the newspapers club, offers to help her and gather some things about Benio's sister. Although she turns out to be more of a pain in the ass than help, as she's persistently a little too forward about things. And to further her demise, Kobeni walks in on several embarrassing situations of Konoha and causes her paranoia about the president's sister to grow. The next day, after a request from Benio to get along with her sister, she tries to converse with the little sister, but ends up in an argument with Mashiro, making the two parties realize that each of them belongs to the same species. For the time being, Kobeni decides to keep Konoha's identity a secret from her sister. The next day, to confront each other's secret, Mashiro and Konoha manage to meet up behind the school building after a failed rooftop confrontation. The latter blames the former that she's staying at Benio's place only in order to get closer to her, but the former, along with Hakuya, manages to clear her misunderstanding that this has nothing to do with the president. But once Konoha's doubts are resolved, she takes a quick look at him and exclaims that her mother taught her to claim a man if he belongs to the same species as her. Thus, loudly, she asks him to marry her, as Kobeni is listening, shocked. Mashiro tells the blonde girl that Hakuya is already engaged, but they notice Kobeni blitzing from there as he chases after her. Once caught up, he reaffirms that he is already engaged to her, so there's no need to worry. Nico listens in on this and inquires if the two of them are dating, although Hakuya rejects the notion, as Kobeni wanted to keep their relationship a secret. That blows the reporter away, but she lets Konoha know that the two have nothing going on. She wonders if Kobeni is forcefully being engaged, and if so, if she has a chance. The next day, she asks her to break the engagement if she doesn't want the relationship. This makes the frail girl cry, and Benio walks in on this, but the crisis is averted because she thought that the dust is the reason she's crying. Later that night, she too affirms to her fiancé that she's not against the engagement. In order to reciprocate the feeling, he decides to try his best for the white day. The next day, she manages to clear up the misunderstanding about the engagement with Konoha so that there is no room for doubt, and thus, a rejected Konoha feels bad for putting Nico on her tail, so she gives the news reporter a simpler article to publish about President's sister. Later, Mashiro clears up to Kobeni that the blonde girl didn't have any romantic feelings towards Hakuya, but she wanted to marry him because they are from the same species. Thus, the situation is back to normal. After school that day, Hakuya heads separately in order to buy some gifts for his fiancée, but time passes and he's unable to find anything. Although he encounters Kobeni, who has also been shopping, and she gives him a handkerchief, the same as hers. Still, he was never able to find a gift for her fiancé. He continues wondering what to get throughout the day. Thus, Mashiro later suggests that the two of them go out on a date, but thanks to her feeling embarrassed to be alone with her fiancé, Kobeni invites the little sister along with them. And the next day, the date arrives, but it looks more like an outing than a date. Although when the trio is on their way back, a gust of wind blows away the hair that covers his right eye, and Kobeni witnesses the scar that her fiancé got trying to save her. The conversation is derailed, but Mashiro asks her to not blame herself because that's not what her brother wants. And when she goes up to their room the next morning to wake them up, nobody's inside. The only clue she has is the text left on her phone, which stated that they're returning to the mountains. Although that wasn't enough, and as time passes, her anxiety grew. After consulting with Mayura, who suggests that she does whatever her heart tells her to, she heads towards the siblings' home. She takes the train and then a bus, and thus finally reaching the snowy mountains, that is the pair's home. She continues to wander through the forest, calling out for the two, but gets nothing in return. Unfortunately, soon a blizzard hits, and she's forced to take shelter in a cave, where Hakuya and Mashiro find her. Although her body is burning up, the brother heads to call for help from the village, and the sister goes to gather some sticks to burn. But in this time, Kobeni manages to walk out of the cave. She walks to an edge with soft snow that crumbles, and she starts falling, but this time, Hakuya wasn't late. He grabs her hand and carries her back to safety. Thanks for watching. If you liked it, leave us a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more.